Joining us now in studio is Mr. Aaron Wudrick, Director of the Domestic Policy Program at the Macdonald Laurier Institute. Aaron, great having you in person in studio today.
Pleasure to be here.
Now let's talk about these big issues, Aaron. We've got housing affordability. Now that's been a concern for a long time, but during the election campaign itself, it's a very big topic. So what are some of the major factors around rising housing costs in Canada?
Well, it's a good thing that it's a hot topic, Nima, because it's a growing issue of importance to many Canadians. Housing was expensive before the pandemic. The pandemic sort of turbocharged the housing market. And the reality is there's two broad issues with housing. There's a demand problem and a supply problem. And all of the attempts to fix the housing issue in this country really get down to one of those two issues. The other thing that I think causes housing to be a particular issue is that multiple levels of government are responsible for housing. You have municipalities, you have provinces, you have the federal government, and you need all three of those governments sort of rowing in the same direction if you hope to get anywhere. So, now housing is a hot topic in the campaigns, all the parties making very big promises. And I think the question that they're going to have to answer for Justin Trudeau is going to be, you've had 6 years. Why didn't you do anything about this until now? And as for the opposition parties, it's going to be, how are you going to succeed where the Liberals were not able to?
Now, considering we're in the second week of the campaign here, what do we know so far about the parties' platforms when it comes to housing affordability?
Well, we know that both the Liberals and the Conservatives are promising to increase supply a lot. Conservatives, 1 million houses in 3 years, Liberals by 1.4 in 4 years, so quite a significant sum. It's not as big as you might think because about 280,000 houses are built every year in Canada already, so you're seeing a slight increase. But I think that's an analysis or an acknowledgement that supply is a big part of the problem. The other side is demand. It's tricky to try and help people who obviously need to buy a home to buy one without also dumping more money into the market and creating bidding wars and sort of overstimulating demand, which can also drive up prices. So, it's a challenging area. I don't think there's a magic bullet. But the fact that it has taken, front and center stage during this election, I think is probably a good sign.
All right, Aaron, let's jump to the inflation rate. We know the Bank of Canada said the recent spike is only temporary, but if this spike lasts longer than expected, how does that affect the next Canadian government coming in?
Well, it's an issue, obviously, not just for Canadian households, but for government. Government spends a lot of money. They have to provide services and buy things with that money. Your dollar does not go as far. Canadians are noticing that it's costing them more when they go to buy groceries, when they go to buy gas, when they take their family out for dinner. So it is creating a crunch. And this, if inflation continues to grow at this rate, that's going to put serious pressure on a government that is already spending more money than it's taking in.
All right, Aaron, just a little over a minute left here, but I want to jump to economic growth. We know that's a very high priority coming out of the pandemic. What sort of industries can Canada leverage for economic growth within the country?
Well, this is an age-old question. If it was easy to know, governments would always pick the winning horse. And I think we get into trouble when governments sort of tap an industry on the head and say, you're the one that's going to solve all our problems. But I think what we can do is look to the industries where we have already had an advantage. If you look at things like the resource sector, Canada is obviously a big provider of oil around the world. In spite of the fact, of course, climate change is a growing concern, oil is not going anywhere tomorrow, and people are still going to need that. And so if Canada is better at extracting oil, in a way that's more environmentally friendly than other countries, has tougher restrictions, higher standards, that's something I think that we can lean into and not just benefit the globe, but benefit ourselves economically. Also, agriculture is another area. And in spite of the image of an industry that is, sort of farmers in overalls, it's actually a very advanced area. There's a lot of advances in agricultural technology. Canada's a world leader in this. And of course, the world population is growing and people need to eat. So this is another area that I think policymakers need to really lean into.
All right, Aaron Wudrick from MLI, always great having you on Forum Daily. Thanks again for joining us today in studio.
A pleasure. Thank you.